All right, so we're diving deep into the world of Han Kang today, and specifically her Nobel Prize speech and lecture.
Yeah, those are amazing.
Yeah, and I thought it was just fascinating that she kind of pulled back the curtain a little bit on her writing process and her struggles and even, the kinds of questions that she's asking herself as she writes.
Right. It wasn't just like, here's my books.
Right, exactly.
It was like, here's my brain. Like, This is what it's like to write these books.
Yeah, and also some of the anxieties, I think, around writing, too, that she kind of shared.
Yeah.
And so she starts off with this memory that seemed really simple to me at first, but like the more I thought about it, the more profound it became. She talks about a group of children sheltering from rain.
Right. And from that, she extrapolates this whole idea of multiple first-person perspectives.
Oh, that's such a good point. Yeah.
Which is so central to her work.
Yeah. And so, like, how do you see that playing out, with that memory and then how that kind of...
Well, each child is experiencing that rain differently,
Right.
One child might have like a bright yellow raincoat on.
Right.
And another one might not have a raincoat and be getting soaked.
Right.
And, they might be thinking about what their parents are making for dinner that night or if they're going to get in trouble for being late.
Yeah.
So it's all these different anxieties and experiences that are unique to them.
Right.
But at the same time, they're all sharing this one experience together, this moment of sheltering from the rain.
That binds them together, yeah.
Yeah.
So she's kind of getting at, like, this idea that even within shared experiences, there are these layers upon layers of individual, perceptions and feelings.
Yeah, I think she's trying to get at this idea of, like, the mosaic of human experience.
Okay.
And she uses all of those individual perspectives and feelings to create that picture.
Okay, I like that. And then she takes us to human acts.
Yes.
And, this is dealing with a really dark chapter.
A much darker.
In South Korean history.
Yeah.
The Gwangju Uprising.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that she uses this phrase in her speech.
Right.
She talks about needing the assistance of the dead to navigate the complexity of this event.
So what does that mean, like assistance?
Well, I think on one level she's talking about the victims.
Okay.
But she's also talking about those who perpetrated the violence.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So she's not shying away from trying to understand the perpetrators.
Okay, so it's not just a black and white kind of good versus evil, but there's all these...
She's acknowledging that there are multiple truths.
Yeah, and to try to understand all of that is kind of a burden, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, it's a heavy burden.
Yeah. But it's also like, maybe that's where the art comes in,
Right.
Because, like, as humans.
Well, and she's lived with this her whole life. I mean, she was a child in Gwangju when this happened. Wow. So this is something that has been with her, throughout her life.
And it's something that she returns to again and again in her work. I mean, even We Do Not Part, which we'll talk about, a little bit later, deals with the Jeju Uprising.
Right, another really dark chapter.
Korean history,
Yes.
So it seems like she's not afraid to dive into those really difficult periods.
She's not afraid of the darkness.
Yeah, and to really ask those tough questions. Like, she even poses this question.
Yeah.
Can the dead save the living?
And I think that question really haunted her as she was doing her research for Human Acts, because she was reading, countless testimonies and feeling her own belief in humanity shaken.
Wow.
And I think it's a question that's relevant to all of us in some way.
How do we reconcile ourselves with the past?
Right. How do we atone for the sins of our fathers?
Yeah. And maybe it's not just the literal dead, right?
I think that's right.
It's also like the weight of history, the legacies of trauma.
Yes.
But also legacies of resilience, too. Right?
Yes.
Because she also talks a lot about resilience.
Right.
And this ties into, I think, something that you brought up earlier, which I thought was really interesting, this idea of light.
Yeah, and this contrast between darkness and light.
Okay.
And you see this most strikingly in We Do Not Part.
Right.
With this image of a candle at the bottom of the sea.
Okay, so let's paint that picture for the listener.
Right. So imagine this vast expanse of ocean.
Yeah.
The depths are unknown.
Yeah.
And at the very bottom, somehow a single candle is burning brightly. It's this stark contrast between the immense pressure, the crushing darkness, And yet there's this flicker of light.
Yeah, so it's not just about survival.
Well, it's about hope.
Yeah.
It's about resilience.
Okay, and how do you see that playing out with the character of Jong Sim in We Do Not Part?
Well, she's a mother who's lost her children
Right.
during the massacres.
Yeah.
And she refuses to let go of their memory.
Right.
She keeps their memory alive.
Yeah, and this kind of reminds me of what she said about language as like a golden thread that connects hearts.
Yeah, and I think that image of the candle ties into that so beautifully.
Okay, so it's like through language, through remembering, through storytelling, we can keep those connections alive.
Yeah, even across generations.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. Okay, and then she takes us even deeper into her writing process. And this is something that I found so fascinating. She talks about it as an act of embodiment, like using her senses, her entire being, to breathe life into her words.
It's not just an intellectual exercise for her. It's a very physical experience.
Okay, and she even goes so far as to say that she feels a physical connection with her readers, like an electric current running through the page.
Like a circuit being completed.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
And she's so honest about the challenges, too. You know,
absolutely.
She talks about the times when she's felt lost or uncertain about the constant questioning and revising that goes into crafting these narratives.
Yeah.
So what do you make of that?
Well, I think it's really refreshing to hear that from someone who's, you know, achieved such acclaim.
Right.
Because it reminds us that the creative process is not always easy.
Right.
It's not always glamorous.
Right. It's messy.
It can be really messy and full of self-doubt.
Yeah. But through it all, like, she perseveres. You know, she keeps going. And I think that's what's really inspiring about her.
Right. And she talks about the importance of intuition, of letting those flashes of insight guide her.
Yeah. So it's not just about you know, brute force. It's also about like the surrendering to the process.
Surrendering and also recognizing those moments when your subconscious mind breaks through with a new perspective or a new idea.
Yeah. And then you got to go with it. Right?
Yeah.
And she doesn't shy away from the messiness either.
No.
You know, she talks about the false starts, the abandoned drafts, the moments of self-doubt. And it's like, she's saying that that's all part of it.
All part of the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
So, but through it all, she's driven by this desire to understand the world, to explore the depths of human experience, and to use her writing to make a positive impact.
Right. And I think you see that commitment to social justice woven throughout her work.
Yeah, especially in Human Acts, right, where she's confronting that brutality of the Gwangju Uprising head on.
Yeah, she doesn't flinch from the violence.
But she approaches it with this.
But she does it with a deep sense of empathy and respect for both the victims and the perpetrators.
Right. And this is where her research process really comes into play. Because she talks about immersing herself in testimonies and historical documents. Right. Even visiting the sites of these events.
Yeah.
You know, and really feeling the weight of history. And allowing those experiences to inform her writing.
It's powerful stuff.
Yeah. And it's a reminder that, you know, the creative process is not just about imagination. It's also about...
Right. It's about engaging with the real world.
Right. Yeah.
With the lived experiences of others.
Yeah. And so with that in mind, like, what do you think is the one thing that you really want our listener to kind of take away from this conversation today?
You know, I think the biggest takeaway for me is the power of her belief in humanity. Because despite all of the darkness that she confronts, she never loses sight of the light.
Right.
You know, she reminds us that even in the face of unimaginable suffering, there's still a possibility for healing, for growth, for connection, for love.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really powerful message.
Yeah. And it's something that I think we can all draw strength from.
Absolutely.
Especially in times like these.
Yeah.
You know, when the world can often feel...
Yeah, when things feel really bleak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not about ignoring the darkness.
No.
Right? It's about acknowledging it.
It's about holding space for both the darkness and the light.
Yeah. And maybe even finding beauty in those unexpected places.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights today.
You're welcome.
This has been a really thought-provoking conversation.
Yeah, it has.
And I know our listeners are going to have a lot to think about.
Yeah.
So join us next time as we continue our deep dive into the world of Han Kang.
Sounds great.
We're
looking forward to it.
See you then.
Yeah. It's a reminder that words have weight, that they have the power to shape our understanding of the world, to inspire us, to challenge us, to heal us, and to connect us in ways that we never thought possible.
And Han Kang doesn't shy away from exploring the different ways we use language, like in Greek lessons.
Yeah.
She explores this relationship between a woman who's lost her voice and a man who's losing his sight.
Right.
So how do you see that playing into this idea of language and connection?
It's brilliant, really. I mean, by taking away those conventional forms of communication, she's really forcing us to consider the deeper essence of language.
Right.
You know, the ways that we connect beyond just words.
Right.
I mean, think about that scene you mentioned before with the woman tracing the words on the man's palm.
Right.
It's intimate, it's tactile, and it really speaks volumes about the power of nonverbal communication.
And it's not just the words themselves, right? It's also the intent.
Yes.
The shared experience, the longing to connect. That's present even in the absence of spoken language.
Exactly.
And this kind of ties back into her fascination with multiple perspectives, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Even in silence.
Yes.
There are layers of meaning. There are unspoken emotions, and there are individual ways of experiencing the world.
Right. And it's through exploring those layers that she's able to create such rich and complex narratives.
Okay, so we've talked about the power of her language, her use of symbolism, this constant exploration of multiple perspectives. But something else that really struck me in her Nobel lecture was when she talked about those times when she couldn't write fiction at all, and she turned to astrophysics.
Oh, yeah, that's so fascinating.
Yeah. What do you make of that?
Well, it's like she needed to step outside of the realm of human experience to delve into this vastness of the universe, to kind of gain a new perspective on the questions that were haunting her.
It makes you wonder, like, what was she seeking in those stars, in those distant galaxies?
Was it a form of escape?
Okay.
A way to distance herself from the pain and the suffering that she so often explores in her fiction?
Right.
Or maybe it was a way to reconnect with something larger than herself.
Okay.
To find a sense of awe and wonder that could kind of reignite her creative spark.
Okay, so how do you think that experience with astrophysics might have influenced her later work?
It's hard to say, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's certainly an intriguing possibility. I mean, perhaps that immersion in the world of science, with its emphasis on observation and exploration and the search for understanding, helped her to kind of approach her fiction with a renewed sense of curiosity and a deeper appreciation for the mysteries of human existence.
And, you know, it's interesting to think about how her work has been received in different cultures and contexts. I mean, she's obviously gained a huge international following, but her work has also been met with some controversy, particularly in her home country of South Korea.
Right. And I think it's understandable that a writer who confronts such challenging and often taboo subjects is going to elicit a range of responses.
Right.
And I think it speaks to the power of her work.
Yeah.
Its ability to provoke strong emotions, to challenge our assumptions, and to spark conversations about these difficult and often uncomfortable truths.
Yeah. I mean, she doesn't shy away from depicting the darker side of human nature.
No, she doesn't.
The violence, the cruelty, the ways that we can hurt each other, both physically and emotionally. But she also recognizes the beauty, the resilience, and the enduring power of the human spirit to overcome adversity.
Yes, and it's that balance, that ability to hold space for both the darkness and the light that makes her work so compelling and so enduring.
It's like she's saying that there's beauty to be found even in the midst of suffering, that there's hope to be found even in the darkest of times.
That's right.
And it's through recognizing those glimmers of light, those moments of connection and compassion, that we can begin to heal ourselves, to heal each other, and to create a world that is more in alignment with our highest values and aspirations.
I love that.
And, you know, what's interesting is that even though her work is deeply rooted in Korean history and culture, it also speaks to these universal themes of love and loss and identity and the search for meaning.
Absolutely.
And I think that's one of the reasons why she's been able to connect with readers from all over the world.
That's right, because those are themes that resonate with everyone.
Right, exactly.
Regardless of their background or their culture.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the ideas and the themes in Han Kang's work, but I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about her writing style.
Okay.
One of the things that I find so fascinating about her is her use of imagery.
Oh, yeah, she's a master of that. Like, she has this incredible ability to create these vivid and haunting images that stay with you long after you've finished reading her books.
It's true. And she uses language to evoke not just sights, but sounds and smells and textures, the very feel of a place or an experience.
Right, like she's painting a picture with words, and you can just step right into that world that she's creating. And she uses those images in such powerful and symbolic ways.
Yeah, she does.
Like, think about that image of the candle at the bottom of the sea.
Oh, yes.
In We Do Not Part.
That's such a powerful image.
It's so simple yet so powerful, and it speaks volumes about the resilience of the human spirit.
And I think that image is so effective because it's not just visual.
Right.
It's also tactile. It's emotional.
Right.
It's even spiritual.
Yeah, you can feel the coldness of the water.
Yes.
The pressure of the depths, the fragility of that flame. And yet there's also this sense of hope.
Yes.
Of defiance.
Of something beautiful and enduring, refusing to be extinguished.
It's a powerful reminder that even in the face of unimaginable suffering, there's a possibility for light, for renewal, for something beautiful to emerge.
I love that. And that imagery is not just confined to her descriptions of nature.
Right.
It's also present in her depictions of the human body. The ways that she explores the physicality of pain, of desire, of the vulnerability and the resilience of the flesh.
Yeah, she's really attuned to the body.
Right.
And its role in our experience of the world.
Yeah, and she explores that connection between the body and the mind, the physical and the emotional in such a nuanced and thought-provoking way.
And it's one of the things that makes her work so challenging, so rewarding.
So to kind of bring this back to the listener, why do you think it's important for us to engage with this kind of writing?
You know, I think it's important because it challenges us.
Okay.
It makes us uncomfortable. It forces us to confront those difficult truths about ourselves and about the world that we live in.
And maybe even see the world in a new way.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah. And she's doing it in a way that is both deeply personal and universally relevant. Her work is rooted in her own experiences, but it also speaks to those larger universal truths that we all grapple with, regardless of our background or our beliefs.
And it's through that combination of the personal and the universal that she's able to create these incredibly powerful and moving narratives that stay with you long after you've finished reading them.
Her stories linger in the mind. They haunt the heart. They make us question our assumptions, and they inspire us to live more meaningful and compassionate lives.
It's a reminder that art has the power to change us, to transform us, to help us to see the world in new ways.
And that those moments of connection, those acts of kindness and compassion are what ultimately give meaning and purpose to our lives.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Han Kang, what's the one thing you want our listeners to walk away with today? What's that most important takeaway from her Nobel speech and lecture?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is the sheer power of her belief in humanity.
Yeah.
You know, despite confronting such darkness, such violence, such profound questions about the limits of human endurance, she never loses sight of the light.
Right.
She reminds us that even in the face of unimaginable suffering, there's always a possibility for healing, for growth, for connection, for love.
You're right. It's not about ignoring the darkness, but about finding those glimmers of hope, those moments of beauty and grace that remind us of what it means to be human.
Exactly.
And she encourages us to do the same, to look for those moments in our own lives.
Yes.
To cherish them and to share them with others.
Exactly. It's like she's saying that each of us has a story to tell, a unique perspective to share, and that those stories have the power to connect us, to heal us, and to inspire us to create a more just and compassionate world.
So if you haven't read Han Kang yet, I urge you to pick up one of her books. You won't be disappointed. And if you're already a fan, I hope this deep dive has given you a new appreciation for her work, her creative journey, and the profound insights that she offers into the human experience.
And remember, as you delve into her world, be prepared to be challenged, to be moved, to be transformed.
Han Kang's work is a gift, a testament to the power of literature, to connect us, to heal us, and to remind us of what it truly means to be human. Until next time, keep diving deep.